Urban Media Today is your source for entertainment, news, sports, and lifestyle. It's your online resource for health and fitness, providing tips to decrease your heart disease or increase your good spirits. When you can't find who made the top picks in HBCU sports or what part of the country is most exciting or affordable to travel with the entire family, Urban Media Today is there to provide you with all that you need and just a click away. Log on to urbanmediatoday.com now. Find us on social media. Urban Media Today, your lifestyle information and blog website.
Welcome to the Give It Up podcast on urbanmediatoday.com, where we give it up for excellence, greatness, and leadership, and where we continue to use sports as a metaphor for life. Again. We also use this platform for discussions around community, and today is no different. We have three beautiful people back on the set. We got Julius Boatwright from Still Smiling. He's the founder and the CEO. We also have Ricky Bigelow Biggs, Belsuver born, one of my family Belsuverins, and he's back. He works with the Still Smiling organization as well. And then we have my cousin, my blood, Larry Harris, St. Lawrence Harris. He's here too. And we're back talking about mental health. And we're hoping that, we can help some people through this discussion. That's really what the point of it all is. And Ricky, last week we were talking about trauma. And I just want to say real quick, something was triggered for me when Julius was speaking. He was talking about community trauma. And I remember distinctively one summer, I can't remember what grade I was in, but I was down Warrington playing basketball on the court. We heard some shots, looked over, and right in front of Stony Bay's house, there was a guy lying on the ground and blood was like trickling out. All you got to know is I never came back. I'm getting choked up thinking about it. I never came back out the house the rest of the summer. And I went home and never told a soul. So, yeah, there's definitely community trauma for sure. Go ahead, Ricky. Jump in there.
Yeah, of course. I'm sorry you definitely had to go through
Yeah,
that. Many of us. Sorry you had to experience that.
Crazy.
To kind of piggyback sort of off what you said and picking up on last week's show, when we first came into the community after a tragedy to be mental health first aiders, I had to deal with a lot of backlash from the community because people were so, and this is where systematic racism, the effects of that hit the community. People were so skeptical into thinking that because others have done this, using this child's death as a way, to boost their organization or to grandstand. So I got flooded with calls of people thinking that we were trying to capitalize on this particular incident. It was a baby or death. And once I explained that, no, these are the services that many other communities, particularly the white community, they get whenever something happens. So we weren't even used to having a service like Still Smiling with no strings attached and come up and talk to a therapist tonight.
They thought you get over on them.
Yes, they thought we were being disrespectful, trying to get over. And once I explained to what we were and that we welcome you to come as well, they became advocates after that. And this was several groups of people, and it blew up on Facebook and whatever and whatnot. So I had to have these conversations and tell people, look, our white brothers and sisters, when their parents get divorced, they go to trauma. I mean, they go to therapy. So, we don't go to therapy when people are being killed.
In front of us.
Doors in front of us. Doors kicked in because dad is being dragged out for some drug offense or something like that. That's traumatic. So yes, having to face that. And just one last thing one good thing about the youth during this movement, white youth are forcing their parents and their families to have these conversations now because they've never dealt with their trauma from slavery, from owning people. So I've had having these conversations, like I'm having these hard conversations with my family. Yeah, they're used to saying racist things. They're used to being a certain way at a cookout. And I'm telling them, no, that's not okay. So now it's forcing many of them to deal with their trauma. And that's just all I wanted to say about last week's question. Morgan, I appreciate you for letting me
And
chat, man.
piggybacking on what you said just now, I don't know if you guys saw the images. I can't remember what state or city it was in, of the family that was pulled over. Somebody was suspected of stealing a motorcycle, and they were in a car, and they had anywhere from a 6-year-old to a 17-year-old face down with their hands behind their back. And I can't imagine the therapy that the 6-year-old, well, all of them are going to have after something like that. And it just goes back to, you know, these are things that I don't know if they happen that often in other communities. It's just horrific. And I wanted to talk more about trauma, and I started to talk a little bit, like I said before, I was triggered by, you know, what I saw when I was a child. And then you fast forward, I was thinking about before we got on the show, because I'm pretty much a reluctant therapy seeker myself. I've never been to therapy, but I listen to a lot of, you know, therapeutic podcasts. And so I guess that's my therapy in a sense. And I was listening to a podcast today, and I just wanted to hear if you guys agree with the statement. And the lady that was on the podcast said that pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. I don't know if that resonates with you in a therapy, with a therapy background. She was saying we're all going to experience pain, but we can continue to suffer if we don't seek therapy, possibly. We'll re-traumatize ourselves. Does that make sense to you guys, Julius?
A little bit. And the part of it that I would want to kind of extract or peel back a little bit, this idea of like, kind of like blaming the person.
The victim.
The victim blaming. So I understand that we are powerful beyond belief, and we can. I'm a firm believer in like speaking it into existence, and as I mentioned on last week's show, following God's orders and really aligning with His will and with the universe. I'm a firm believer in that. However, I do think there are certain situations that happen that sometimes it just so happens to be outside of people's control. And because of the country that we live in, that always wants to like label people and always wants to like to make you believe that there are no other circumstances or no other systems or barriers that impact or influence you from being whatever the heck you want to be, that's just false. So
Absolutely.
As it relates to suffering, you know, the way I view it in the suffering that I've gone through, for me, it was all about perspective and deepening or widening my perspective. So now I see my therapist, what is today? Is today Wednesday?
Today's Wednesday.
I talked to my therapist.
Today's Saturday.
So I talk to my therapist every Wednesday at 11 o'clock. Every Wednesday at 11. And the last time I spoke to my therapist, we're working on like stuff around my racial identity. So I'm talking to him about, as a Black man, when I go into a board meeting or a meeting with investors, most of which who are white, I feel like I need to present a certain way for them. Because if I go in there and I don't present the way that I think I need to present, then I may be leaving resources that were meant to be in the community on the table.
Okay.
There's that part of it, but there's also this part of my identity that says, don't care about that. Like, just go in and just be who you are. But then if it results in hundreds of thousands of dollars that could come back to provide therapy and food and assistance and all these other things. So I always feel like I'm, it's a weird balancing act of trying to stay true to myself and trying to stay true to the community and the people in the community.
Right.
Not kind of coming back to that suffering, not like pimping suffering, right? Because a lot of that happens too, especially in Pittsburgh. There's a lot of like pimping of people's pain that goes on, and that's something like
Wow.
I it's being in some of these rooms and the way the stories that you have to tell and the things that you have to convince people of that there's to get resources is
Mm.
it's mind blowing. But this is the we're stronger together like city. Like this is the most livable, in every report worldwide international city. But you got they're not just giving you resources because they're resources that are already ours and they're owed to us. It's like there's some pimping that's
They want
happening
you to earn them with your trauma.
with your trauma and your what was the other word that you said?
Suffering.
Suffering. Like not pimping people's suffering is just like there's something innately wrong with that.
I agree. Ricky, you guys jump in.
I totally agree 100%. Our city doesn't always like to tell, its true underside with this most livable thing and whatnot. But if you just look at Pittsburgh from a geographical standpoint,
Real
it's
quick, it's not the
completely
most
segregated.
livable for Black people. That I saw a
Exactly.
video on that as
It's the
well. It's
worst.
not the most livable for. It's one of the worst for Black
It's the
people.
worst in the country. Absolutely. And for women, my God, a study just came out, I believe, about a year ago.
Yes.
Instantly, when a woman leaves Pittsburgh, everything instantly goes, yep, up.
Goes up.
And that's by design because I tell a lot of our young people and young women, yeah, I get it leaving. We need you to leave and come back so we can change this thing that's going on, the stranglehold over the over Black Pittsburgh. If all of our brightest minds forever leave and go to these other overcrowded areas where, and I get it linking up with others, but we need people to come back so it can be livable for all of us.
Absolutely. Work where you're at. Build your community from the inside out. I totally agree. All right, so I know for a fact you guys that you work with Urban Kind Institute, partnered with them before, Julius, as well as One Hood Media. I see both of those organizations, and I've followed you on different Facebook Live events and whatnot. So my question is, with all these great organizations and all the ones, Larry, that I know you're involved um, with all these organizations in Pittsburgh, are Pittsburghers, the Black community in Pittsburgh, are we starting to get it in the area of not even just mental health, but voting, fighting for our rights in terms of systemic racism? Are we becoming more active in our own lives around mental health and activism? Is that happening here, or is it still slow? What do you guys think?
I'm just a firm believer of before you can solve a problem, I think the first step is to know it exists.
Hmm.
Well, awareness is key, right? And We're Still Smiling has brought an abundance of awareness to the problem for solution, right? So absolutely, it's getting somewhat better, but a long way to go, I would say. With such a strong topic, I mean, the whole cliche of one man or one man left behind is too many, right? So as gradually the word spreads, and as you see, Julius is taking it from, the hilltop area to go further out, and even, to even the outskirts of Pittsburgh.
Yes. Growth.
So it's exponential growth, right? Because, you train one and teach one as we train more, you know what I mean? So with that particular exponential growth, it'll definitely be brought to the limelight. And they've got a lot of, Ricky and, Joyce has got a lot of outside attention from, I'm talking big name people. I'll let them tell their own story. But you see that movement, I will call it, happening. With anything with righteous intent, you'll get that materials, you'll get those finances, you'll get those people. That engine starts rolling, But kind of, I did want to touch on one topic you mentioned in the beginning, as far as the differentials with the trauma aspects. And I mean, it really goes down to, as I mentioned, last week when I talked on, I said I would touch on it a little bit later when we talk this week, as far as the racial disparities when it comes to the word racism, because we have on television, you'll hear, different ethnic groups will say, it's throwing around racist, and that person's being racist. I understand a bigotry to it, prejudging of a person, but until you're truly oppressed by a statement, by a system, systematic racism, right, and things of these sorts, then you truly understand what the impact of that is and what the trauma of that is. And with the, where almost it's stigmas where that creates. Where certain people think that, I mean, we've all been in class before, what do you ask? Ask the white guy with the glasses on, he'll know. So it's just those particular stigmas where a certain culture is always correct, whereas a certain other culture, is being promoted with imagery, right? We all just talked about last week and this week, the images we see. How many of your people that look like you see going to prison every evening on the news across the country, which is a small, less than 1% of the rest of us who go to prison. So if you never met a people, right, and you watch television as imagery, you really think that these folks are crazy because you haven't had no interactions. Like how Julius said, I know myself and Ricky have been in many of meetings and things that we're trying to do, and we'll open our mouths and somebody looking like we're unicorns.
They're like, what?
Exactly.
They think the exception as opposed to the rule.
Exactly, right? So that's where a bigotry comes in. The racism is where it's what Julian is saying, where I'm almost feel as though am I like in here tap dancing for some money? Like, yeah, we need this money, we're messed up. So it's where you're taking someone's insecurities, right? You're taking someone's disparities, you're taking someone's pain, tragedy, and another T word, truth, right? And kind of almost using it against them to use that for dialogue, but not direction or solution.
Right. Rick, you want to jump in?
He pretty much summed it up right there. He and I have had these discussions so many times, just based around that. He spoke for me right there.
You
I
got
agree
it.
100%.
So I was talking about last week as well. I'm a reluctant person to seek therapy. So my basic story around trauma, I already talked about one incident, and that actually happened to me 2 different summers where, and I can't remember because I was younger. I can't remember exactly what part of the summer where I didn't witness the person get shot, but I saw him on the ground, went home, never told my parents, and just never came back outside for the rest of the summer. Stayed in the alley where I lived. So that was one summer. A second summer, there were 2 family members fighting. And I was like, just happened to be walking past. And everybody was like, they got knives in there. They got knives in there. And I heard somebody scream. And I was, same thing, ran home, never came back out the house. Think about this trauma as a child. So that's 2 different summers. And Ricky and Lara tell you, I never left the basketball court. So for me not to go to the basketball court, you know what I'm saying, Rick? It was serious. Other
Never.
trauma, other trauma. So never knew my dad. Then I was in 8th grade, found out that he had been murdered. So never had the opportunity to meet him because he passed away. So just a whole lot of different things that happened in my life, but I never really sought therapy. I know there has to be, part of my personality or part of what I'm doing that is definitely affected by that. And I'm not serving the full purpose, I guess, that I could be. Can you guys speak to maybe something you've gone through, and what could you tell people to make them be less reluctant to seek therapy?
I would say it's a journey. Like it's a lifelong journey. So this conversations even come up in some of our conversations during class. Like we'll have someone that says, well, everybody in the group should get therapy, right? Like we should all just see a therapist right now. And the intent behind that is, okay, we should all get therapy. We all got trauma. We all need to dig a little bit deeper and start healing from some of these childhood things, from some of these things that we're from childhood to present day. We need to start healing from them, and therapy can support that process. Now, while that may be true, everybody just progresses at a different level, at a different pace, right?
Mhm.
And everyone's comfort level is going to be different as well. So, me and Biggs and Larry, we always talk about this. Like, we're not prescriptive, so we're not saying you have to do this way. You got to do it on this timetable, because then it becomes like a tug of war. Then it
Right.
becomes more like the system that we're trying to not be like. Now, mind you, we still have therapists who work within that traditional system who come into our spaces, and we've even had some challenging moments with that, because folks come in and they bring that Black folks, they bring that
Mindset.
prescriptive nature and that prescriptive mindset in those all those clinical tools, which is fine and dandy, and you need to be able to use that to be effective at your craft. But when you come into our space, we have to let you know the energy of our space. You're coming in here and you almost want to kind of shed your titles and everything at the door, but just you can never like leave it all at the door. You're going to bring the skills in with you. You're going to have your antennas up. You're going to be thinking like, okay, how
Mhm.
can I support this person? But we don't want you coming in like, I'm the psychologist here, so I'm here and everybody else is here. We want you coming in like you're a trained psychologist, but you're just right here with everybody else. We all got
Come
the
in as yourself, in other words, be authentic, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
people probably listen a little bit better, especially in our community.
yes. So trying to come full circle with it, it's like you and anybody else, we cannot beat ourselves up for not knowing what we don't know. Like, we cannot beat ourselves up for that. But now that you do have this heightened awareness, and you're like, you know what, I think I could possibly benefit from some therapy
Mhm.
and start to work through some of these things. Like, once you have that heightened awareness and you're like, okay, now I can take one more step, or I could take a half a step, or I could just sit still and just meditate on that and just think about like what therapy could look like, right? You've taken an extra step in your spirit and in your mind, and that's a big deal. We can't go from slavery and trauma and all this pain and suffering to now I'm 10 sessions deep with my therapist. Like, there's so much stuff that has to
I'm
happen,
good. No, it doesn't
which
work like that.
which is why we are every week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6 o'clock. We're doing these sessions and conversations with our folks. And then little by little, some folks will be like, nope, I ain't ready for therapy. I don't want it. I'm cool. But the conversations and the peer support are therapy for them. Being
Right.
able to chop it up with Biggs and Larry and talk about healing is therapy for them. So we also have to um, understand that therapy in the Western world and in the United States is limited, but therapy for the Black experience, as individualized or collective, it could be it's painting, it's art, it's singing, it's sports, it's sleeping, healing, is Black is healing.
Hmm.
Like it's just it's in everything. It's in everything that we do. So it doesn't you don't need to be in therapy or seeing a therapist to be working on your healing.
I love it. Anybody have anything to add on that one?
Um, that's why it's important to have a unique movement like we're doing within the community, is because they serve as, while they're not therapists, we're the cohort is serving as a bridge to
Hmm.
therapy, because everyone in the community knows the members who are in this with us and how long they've been in it with us. So now it's not even a case of, um, man, I need therapy. It's, I need some mental health help, because I
Right.
know you're helping Larry, or you're helping John and Joe, and
Right.
you see what I'm saying? So those barriers that were there, um, presenting however big that barrier may be, they're able to see, hey, somebody from my neighborhood is going through this. So, and it's not forced, like Julia said, and it's, I'm in control. So those processes are being talked about amongst families and community members that would never be talked about before. So just by nature nature of them being with this organization and with them pushing this movement, it has melted so many barriers that, I mean, more than we even imagined when we started this. So that's what I'll say. And another thing is, being traumatized, that's not natural for you to see or even hear about someone killed or shot or stabbed.
Right.
And, you know, and be as though others in your community have been through this. This is why, again, I harp on the importance of using those community members to be those mental health champions and first aiders, because that's our family. You know, those are your family members that are coming from our session or talking about our session now back, you know, at your house or on your street or whatever and whatnot. And it melts a lot of those barriers like ice cream in the sun.
Yeah, Larry, you're sitting up. Look like you got something.
I was going to add on, because Ricky had mentioned about a bridge. And I was just thinking about what you had said and the effect that had on you as far as the two traumatic situations you've seen, all the way to the opposite end of the spectrum of, you know, reaction, for lack of better terms.
Mm-hmm.
I've had children in the camp whose friends, family members have been murdered, and how much desensitized they've become and how much of the danger that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these are the reasons why, you know, everyone has alluded to. I know Ricky had spoken a lot. He was talking. The dangers of it, because now you have these people who, you know, those barriers are starting to be melted, but before that, we're walking around time bombs. You know what I'm saying? When you have these different things that are going on with you, and you don't know how to really redirect that, and even how that affected you, Margot, something that happened as a child. I'm not going to give away age, right? We'll just say a little bit ago. I'm joking. So, right. So, for something like that to still affect you this much, think about how times are now, the things that we're seeing.
Right.
The average life on television is taken every 12.5 seconds. It might be down since, or I mean, as far as minutes or seconds, it might have been even further.
Yeah.
But think about that right there, you know, to the point where it's cursing, you couldn't say damn on TV, let alone flim flammer and everything else that goes on, right? So I think we're becoming a nation of people who are becoming desensitized to trauma because it's pumped on you so much. And a lot of people, as I mentioned before, don't know how to fix these things because they don't know they exist. You know, we've been, if you are, you know, 18 and under, you know, certain things that are being accepted, like video games and, you know, very sexual culture and things of that sort that we're living in, or a new reality. To us, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe what's going on. So I think that's a lot of this where the desensitization comes from. And a lot of people aren't really checking how this is affecting them. I mean, in my personal opinion, I feel as though if you're Black in America, you have some form of PTSD. It's almost inevitable or almost impossible to even, you know, not have an effect of that. I mean, I say a selected few, you know, I'm not saying 100%, but a vast majority are having these traumatic effects of PTSD. And just as far as, you know, the suicide rate in the Black community has been going up, especially during COVID, which is not talked about. The suicide rate, period, in the Black community is not talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And other things that I mentioned last week in the beginning are tabooish, right? Just, oh my God, you can't suicide. Oh, we don't do that. You know, we always say that. Oh, Black people don't do that.
We used to say that, but no, I don't think you can say that anymore.
Right, all people do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was thinking about in terms of COVID when you mentioned desensitized, and how some people are so desensitized that when they talk about people dying of COVID, they're able to dismiss it as if, oh, they're elderly, you know, they had some underlying health condition, as if people woke up in 2020 that were older or had an underlying health condition and said, oh, this is the year that I don't want to be living anymore. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. And I hear people saying those numbers as if they don't represent people. So it's just all the way around unbelievable.
And I would say it goes back to imagery. You know, it's being pumped so much to the point you're like, oh, the old COVID. So now it's almost like, let me retract that a little bit different. The severity of it has been taken out, right? Remember before when you were COVID? I mean, we were all set with masks. I mean,
I wasn't leaving the house.
Get away, you know, and now the comfortability, it's almost like this person.
The sun came out and people thought COVID died. And that's what I've been
I mean,
saying.
it's misinformation also. I mean, that was told if it gets 80-something degrees, it's going, anything. I mean, like, there's no logic to that, right? There's zero logic that virus is just going to magically disappear if you go in the house. There's really been nothing of a large scale, right? Because we're talking about 150,000 deaths. I mean, that's bananas, right? We're 150,000 people
In a few months.
gone in a couple months, right?
And just think about the mental health issues that people are having and going to have because you can't be with your loved ones when they die. So if they're in the hospital, you're not going into the hospital. They need to be buried. You can only have a certain amount of people that can show up at the funeral home. So there's just going to be a whole lot of people traumatized and needing mental health services. I know of at least, I want to say 15 people since COVID started that have lost a parent. One, I just found out yesterday. And and like I said, if they're in the hospital, you can't really be there. So yeah, you guys, just believe it or not, we're coming to the end. But I need to give you guys at least a final thoughts. And within your final thoughts, please just tell us what's the best way for people, Julius, to access your services at Still Smiling. And I want to say congratulations because I know you've been nominated in the city paper for Nonprofit of the Year, the best nonprofit in the city of Pittsburgh. So congratulations on that.
Yeah. So I think the easiest way, everybody's on social media, you know, so it's Still Smiling, STEELSMILING, PGH, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Email is info at stillsmilingpgh.org. And we do have a number. I apologize, I don't have it memorized because it's newer.
That's okay.
Give me a second, I can pull it up.
And we'll try to get this in the show notes too.
412-532-9458. 412-532-9458. Folks could text, they can call. If somebody doesn't pick up, we'll get right back to them. And we also have, I want to tell folks, we have financial support for people if you are ready to go to therapy, particularly Black folks, kids, youth, high school age youth, adults, elders, from 0 to 99. If you want to get some kind of therapy or some kind of mental health support, we have financial resources available for that.
It's been amazing, you guys. Ricky Biggs Bigelow, the Bigelow family, Bell Silver. Love you guys. Cousin Larry, basically my brother. We grew up in the same house, you guys. And Julius, congratulations on your organization. You guys are blessing so many people. I'm just blessed to have met you today. And I might need to access some of these services. So I just want to say thanks again. This has been the Give It Up podcast on urbanmediatoday.com. Thank you to my guests, also Trevin Kiki and Mr. Alan Lincoln. Everybody give it up and be blessed.